What's up guys, Ben here bringing you another video today. It is the Monday after Major 3. Shout out to Los Angeles Thieves. They are your champion of Major 3. Another 4-0 shellacking of Vancouver Surge. Thieves not faced, so shout out to those guys finally getting one on the board. It's time for the tier list. I think we're gonna have roster changes this week, so let's dive in. Let's see where the teams rank. And I'm also gonna give you some early roster mania intel on what teams I think are changing and what teams I think are sticking. For good reasons, bad reasons, let's dive in. All right, so this is the tier list from our last video. This is actually like weeks ago, so this has changed quite a bit. Let me explain to you how I do this, and we're gonna do this a little bit differently because obviously I wanna highlight the teams that might be changing rosters. So top of the class, gonna be your top two teams in the league. Really no surprise, I think who's gonna be there. Sunday regulars or the rest the top 4 teams, and I'll be honest, I think it's pretty clear who those 4 other 2 teams are. Fighting for Sundays is where it gets interesting. That is your top 6 teams, and I think there is definitely probably only one team I would put in there, and then there's gonna be a lot of mid-pack teams. It's really the rest of your league, anywhere from the top 8, the top 10, and then roster changes this week is the teams in mid-pack I think that are going to make a change. I think mid-pack teams that are mid will stick, and the roster change teams will be the ones that actually make a change. Then playing for EWC, well, those 2 squads at the bottom are, playing for EWC. All right, let's start at the bottom. LAG, those guys got choke slammed out of tournaments in 20 minutes by Toronto with a pickup. So I don't really know what else to say about this team. They're just not good. Fellow hasn't played that well. Lunu's not playing well. Kids is falling off. Oh, Johnny's super up and down. I don't know, man. This team is... they'll probably give it a little bit more time, I would think. But yeah, they haven't found the right comp yet to really be competitive. And they may not be by the end of the year. And then we have Vegas Falcons, who are definitely not good enough to be mid-pack. I know a lot of you guys, after the last couple of weeks, have had Vegas delusion syndrome. And I'm glad to be proven right that these guys are just, they're better than their old team. But they suck at control, they suck at S&D, and they're just really good at hardpoint, specifically Skyline hardpoint. But even a poor OpTic Texas team took them out back in 3 maps at the event. And I think for Vegas, you know, there's a much better path than LAG because I think the X and Pred sub duo's got a lot of potential, but I just think Alec and Preston really aren't it. So we'll see if this team makes a change to drop those 2. Unfortunately, I think the realistic targets are probably going to other teams, so I just don't know if they're going to make a change this window. But yeah, no, this squad's not good, and also is not going to make champs. All right, so let's talk about the teams I think that are going to make a roster change. We're going to move Cloud9 as the first team into the entry here. C9 had to start in losers bracket at this event, and they got slammed by Atlanta FaZe 3-0. They're just the masters of none as a team, and I think it's clear that Mac and Attach are both the weak links on this team. And I think for this team to try and make a last-minute champs change, I think it's just going to require 2 players rotating in. I won't be surprised they just make 1 change, but I'd be really shocked that Cloud9 are not making a change. Unlikely to make champs at this point. They would have to they would need a bunch of stuff to break their way. They would need to essentially make it to Sunday and get deep on Sunday to have a chance. So I just don't see it happening. But they still have EWC to gear for, and I think it's going to require a couple of changes, which I think are coming this week. All right, the next team that I am moving down to roster change this week is OpTic Texas. Now, I will say that I can see these guys being stuck in the sometimes bubble they exist in and deciding that maybe they don't need to make a change, which would be psychotic because there's another event where OpTic got top 8. They beat Vegas and then lost to FaZe again for, only the 2nd time this year, but they have not beaten FaZe much in the last 2 years. And I just don't know how you could be in this camp and think that back-to-back-to-back 8s is just, so I think they're going to make a change. I think Mercules, we'll get to towards the tail end of this video, is a likely target here. I think they only need 1. Will it make them amazingly, infinitely better? I don't think so. Will it get them deeper into the weekend? Absolutely. But I expect them to make a change because they're in the 8th spot right now for champs. They need to hustle and catch up to squads like, Boston and Carolina that are starting to fall a bit down the standings and not have to play Thieves or FaZe in winners round 1 at champs. And also contend at an event because they've done 0 of that so far this season, which has been a massive disappointment. All right, I'm going to bounce around a little bit here. I'm going to move 1 team up to fighting for Sundays. Actually, I moved 2 teams up, and I'm going to cover them first before we talk about Minnesota and Carolina. So let's start with the Miami Heretics, but a very nice run this tournament. They beat Toronto. Obviously, Toronto playing with the fill-in. They lost to Thieves. Okay. And then they beat FaZe in a game 5, which is very impressive. And then they lost to Toronto in a game 5. I think, for Miami, you know, top 4 is a very good placing at this event. It's another top 4 they've gotten this season. And I think they've shown that adding Super has really, I think, improved their floor as a team. I just don't know if they're going to consistently get top 4 the rest of the year. When you think about champs, when you think about Major 4, when you think about EWC, these guys are very much in the mix because their search and destroy has gotten way better from where it was at the beginning of the year. So really like this showing from Miami. Would like to see them get deeper in the tournament and not crack, but I don't think you can be too mad about getting top 4 at this one. Let's talk about Boston though. Boston are in, you know, mid is a terrible spot to be in, but I also think that Boston's spot is a terrible spot to be in because Miami's got top 4 potential. These guys on Boston only get top 6. And the way they got top 6 this event is they beat OpTic, nice upset. Lost to Vancouver, okay, 3-1. You know, map pool issues. But then they lost to Toronto with a fill-in 3-1 as well, getting a pity map in the middle of that series. I just think this Boston team just doesn't have enough slaying power to really move up the tier. I think they're really, honestly, performing at their level, maybe slightly overperforming. Like, I think Boston's having a good season. I thought they might be bottom dwellers, but I just don't think this squad has what it takes to really get higher up in the standings. So they're in a weird spot. You're the 6th best team. You're not bad. You're not good. What do you want to do? Do they make a roster change? You can argue maybe pack a punch, but do people want to go there? I don't know what Boston does. If they make a roster change, I won't be surprised. If they don't make a roster change, I won't be surprised. They're the 6th best team right now, considering how Minnesota and Carolina are playing. Absolutely. Because let's talk about both these squads because, man, I don't know. Minnesota beat Carolina at this event, so I will put them above the ranking here. But then they lost to Toronto with a fill-in. I just am worried that of all of the stuff we've said about Minnesota, right, like Esriel, Gio, Nero, we like these players. I just don't know if they're amazing. I think they might just be good, but I don't know if the combination of them or individually, like they just have that, you know, that dog in them to really get deeper into tournaments. And I don't know where that could be coming from. A number of these players, you know, didn't actually get a lot of LAN experience before coming into the league. They weren't exactly like winning Challengers LAN. So I don't even know if some of these guys outside of online tournaments really felt like that level and exceed that level of pressure at a LAN, even at the amateur level. I just feel like for Minnesota, if they want to step it up, I really think trying to find a submachine gun upgrade, because I don't know if I drop Esriel and Gio. I think Nero's the one to go be the play. I just don't know if there's really an SMG available that's going to be better than Nero. Could you argue that Standy is maybe better, or Cap? Potentially, but I just feel like those are side moves. So I don't know what Minnesota is going to do. I just know that right now, I think OpTic will probably make champs over them. Minnesota's got to have an incredible stage. I just don't know if they're the dog in them to make that happen. Now, I think this Carolina team is gritty. I think that they are the biggest fall-off candidates so far this year. I think they got a very hot start. They were really good at protocol, really good at S&D. But I think their respawn is just falling off a cliff and is just not consistent, and they just get outclassed by better teams. And I think the Thieves series is a bad matchup. They lost to them in winners round 1 after losing to them online right before the event. And then they lose to Minnesota. And I don't know. I'm more with this Carolina team that they didn't do a good enough job to really keep up with everybody after they kind of figured out how to play the game. And they're going to make champs, but they're kind of an afterthought on this season. So they're stuck in like an even worse spot than Boston, because at least Boston kind of performing their level. Carolina is not. And I don't know what they're going to do. I expect them to probably stick it, because I think that there are not going to be stellar upgrades in challengers that are not better than what they have now. I think these guys just need to play better. And yeah, we'll see if it works, but I think they may slide farther in the standings. And if, you know, OpTic play a lot better, I don't know if Boston's really going to pass them. I could see them sliding back to like the 7th or 8th spot for champs, which, you know, if you got to play Thieves again for Carolina, chalk that up. All right, so let's get into the 4 best squads in the league. And we're going to start with Toronto Ultra, because what a performance from them this weekend. The Ben Bean situation, very, very unfortunate that he could not play this event due to visa issues, I guess. So hopefully they can clean that up. But Mercules comes in last minute sub, and he is an insane event. I don't think anyone, I mean, I know a lot of people, you know, Chris Parasite was probably the biggest Merc evangelist I know, guessing this kid up, but like good enough that they were just running everybody's world in a hard point this event with him. and he's just dropping numbers. I didn't see that coming. I think the only thing for Toronto, and it was happening online and happening at the event, is their S&D is really their biggest weakness. And so if they can clean up their search, they were still good at hardpoint with Ben. I think they can make a final this year. I think it's doable. I don't know why my co-hosts are talking about shuffling the roster. I think Merck's going to OpTic and they'll run back with the normal squad. But you know the gameplay for Toronto. You got to get better at S&D control because you can't rely on winning 2 hardpoints in a series. But a really tippable run out of Toronto beating LAG, Minnesota, Boston, Miami, and coming up short against Vancouver in losers finals. Like, it's a really good run out of Toronto, and I got to tip it. And then we talk about Vancouver Surge. Now, I'm going to make a reference here. A lot of you guys should know it, but I think it's basically the comp, I think, for what Vancouver is right now. And I'm hoping they don't repeat the history of the team. And that is Black Ops 4 Gen G, which were a very similar squad to Vancouver here. Made a couple of finals, were decently top 3 all year, and eventually just kind of cracked because they couldn't really realize that into an event win, and then just kind of laid an egg at the end of the year. I'm hoping these Vancouver guys won't do that because they play very disciplined. They play very structured. Their ARs are good. Their subs are great, although I think Neptune's got to figure out more consistency in his game. They're ratty. I like the way they play, but going 0-8 map count in 2 back-to-back finals is nuts. And I know it's FaZe. I know it's Thieves. It's just kind of hard to step up to that next level, but they're third. You want to get the first and second. They have to figure it out. And my fear is that if OpTic starts to get better, Miami starts to get better, Toronto starts to get better, these guys just didn't capitalize on their run. So I think Vancouver's going to have a good team for champs. I think they're going to factor in the conversation throughout the whole year. They're the type of team that could pull up the EWC and win, for example. But they got to figure out how to play a better brand of COD at the end of Sundays because they've gotten so close to these winners finals, not gotten it done, and then in the rematch they just get smoked out of the arena in 30-40 minutes. So good performance from Vancouver, another runners up, but they want to get to another level now. Let's see if they can kick it on or if they crack. I'm gonna move Thieves in front of FaZe here. For FaZe, a top 6, but I'm not gonna move them out of top of class just because them and Thieves are really the 1 and 2 seeds, and FaZe have won 2 events this year. I think for FaZe, what kind of killed them at this event and killed them this whole stage, to be honest, where they basically were playing sort of slightly above, but realistically kind of 500 ball, is just losing record in hardpoint. I think their hardpoint's just all over the place. They need to figure out how to be more consistent, especially on Hacienda, if they're not going to play Skyline against people. It just feels like they tweak a bit in hardpoint. Their breaks offs are not good. They have a tough time breaking hills in general in the game mode. They're one of the worst. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we have a whole year of evidence now. They are the 3rd worst, actually 2nd worst breaking team in the league, but they are the #1 rotation win percentage team in the league. So you gotta think that they can learn to break some hills and learn to hold more hills for 60s. Their hardpoint will get a little bit more consistent. So we'll see, because their S&D and their control is good, and I think they match up well against Thieves in those game modes. It's just hardpoint right now is holding them back. I think specifically from the submachine gun players. I know Draza didn't have a great event really either, but they need Simba to be better in a hardpoint. I think these guys will come correct during the Major 4 cycle, and hopefully we can get a Thieves versus FaZe final at some point. And now we talk about Thieves, and I'm just glad these guys kind of realized their potential. You know, at this point, we've now watched like 5 or 6 years of teams, too many teams playing great online, and they pull up to an event and they're just not that. Thieves only dropped 1 series this entire split. Now is that game 5 loss to Toronto. Outside that, they didn't lose the control this entire stage, typical. And then we lost 2 searches, both on dealerships. So I just think Thieves really realize where they're at as a super team, and there's not really much else to say. I think all 4 players in the team played well, although Dan Ghosty got hard carried on Sunday, whatever. You just needed to see one go in like Rory McIlroy, and maybe he'll kick it on from here. I think for Thieves, it's just knowing that you got now to the head of the class, but the target's on your back, and you got to keep up the same effort level that you had this stage after the absolute egg in Major 2. Otherwise, that's going to rear its ugly head again. So glad to see Thieves win. Glad to see those boys get it done. Shout out Nate Shaw. I know he's stressing too. Can they get back to back? It's doable. I think right now I'd pick them over FaZe in a final. I'm just, at the point now with them, they're really good online. As we've seen over the years, that doesn't really matter. Glad they got it done. Let's see if they can win back-to-back lands. Maybe win champs this year, EWC. I don't know. But shout out to Thieves. They're your #1 team right now. So let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.